Who are you going to vote for, mate?
Not sure yet. I'm going to have a detailed look at each party platform and make a rational decision based on the evidence. I'll consider economic policies along with immigration, energy, and other issues of national importance, Most of all, I'm going to look at tax policies.
Yeah, good point. Last year the government took over half my money. I thought I was the pirate.
That's so funny. I know, right? They took more than half of mine too. I wonder what they spend it all on. Why do they need so much?
What do we want?
Free stuff!
When do we want it?
Forever!
What do we want?
Free stuff!
When do we want it?
Forever!
You are all the victims. The 1% are totally evil and stuff. I promise that if I win the election, you will never have to work again. Just vote for me.
Yay! I love the state!
What do we want?
Free stuff!
When do we want it?
Forever!
What do we want?
Free stuff!
When do we want it?
Forever!
Alright boys, hand over the loot. It's in your social contract. Piss off, you wankers. I never signed anything. I earned this money. You didn't earn nothing. Now hand it over, or you'll regret it.
It's okay, pirate. Just hand it over. It's not worth it.
Fine, this is all I've got. Now piss off. It better be all of it, or you'll regret it. What's the point of working so hard if half your money's stolen anyway, just so these idiots can use it to buy votes? I got kids, I got a wife, we got bills, we all work hard.
Pirate, I'm dying.
What? No, you can't die. The country needs engineers. We need smart people. We need true penguinies.
It's okay. Soon I'll be in the great nest. Pirate, this is for you. You were always a good friend. Go to banking. The password is fuck the state.
Right. Fuck the state. Is that case sensitive?
No. Hurry. I don't have much longer.
What the? This is an account for a coin bank in the Pigeon Islands. There's 300 bird coins in it.
Yeah. Fuck the state.
Engineer! No! Holy shit, I'm fucking loaded.
18th century Scottish historian Alexander Fraser Tytler famously claimed that democracy can't exist as a permanent form of government. He argued that once the majority realise they can vote themselves largesse from the public treasury, democracy is essentially doomed. According to Tytler, it will always end in economic collapse due to loose fiscal policy. With debt across the developed world spiralling out of control as a direct result of massive increases in public spending, it's hard to argue against him. This is especially true given that welfare, social security and healthcare make up around half of all national spending in many developed nations, if not most of them. In Australia, if you were to stop all welfare and social security spending tomorrow, we could pay off the entirety of our public debt within a few short years. This doesn't even take into account the army of public servant bureaucrats and massive subsidies paid for various endeavours deemed for the public good. Think renewable energy and any major sporting event.
And to the Victorian government, we have such an extraordinary facility thanks to the vision of governments past and present. The ongoing commitment to redevelopment at Melbourne Park is obvious to everyone here. Next year will be even better and more sophisticated in the way we deliver this extraordinary event. So we look forward to seeing you all then.
The government, she says. What about the minority of Victorians who are actually taxpayers? I guess taking undue credit is a lot easier than actually fighting an African gang problem.
Good evening. A huge gang of violent African teenagers has run wild along the St Kilda foreshore.
The group of young women square up to each other before fists and feet fly in every direction.
Evening, Tony. We're told a group of mainly African youths were working their way down the St Kilda foreshore last night, targeting beachgoers for expensive items like mobile phones or wallets.
Last night we've had a large number of youth attend of African appearance.
A new wave of gang violence is terrorising Melbourne.
A man's been attacked with a hammer in a terrifying carjacking in Malvern East.
Wildly smashing the 7-Eleven doors with a knife, the attendant is inside alone. An accomplice with a machete joins in, hacking at the doors and keeping watch while a third, also armed with a machete, attacks the glass as well.
The PM today blaming Victoria's Premier, Daniel Andrews, for the crime spike.
Victoria Police is a huge organisation, much larger than the federal police. It needs the direction, it's got the capacity to do the job.
Back to the task at hand. Democratic governments have little incentive to reduce spending. Not only are they able to print money at will, they can easily go into debt at a risk-free interest rate. This allows them to make large promises to spend more money to an ever-growing block of taxpayer-dependent voters. Meanwhile, selling a position of spending cuts and fiscal responsibility usually results in howls of outrage. Have a look at this headline from far-left extremist tabloid magazine The Guardian.
Recession hurts, but austerity kills.
If cutting government programs is so dangerous, why don't these virtuous leftists donate their own money? I guess personal responsibility just isn't their thing. For a full rundown of the history of money, along with the result of governments abusing their role as masters of coin, you should watch my video, A Brief History of Money. Link in the description. It is no coincidence that public sector employees tend to vote for bigger government. Ludwig von Mises discusses this in his book Bureaucracy. The bureaucrat is not only a government employee, he is, under a democratic constitution, at the same time a voter, and as such, a part of the sovereign, his employer. He is in a peculiar position. He is both employer and employee, and his pecuniary interest as employee towers above his interest as employer, as he gets much more from the public funds than he contributes to them. This double relationship becomes more important as the people on the government's payroll increase. The bureaucrat, as voter, is more eager to get a raise than to keep the budget balanced. His main concern is to swell the payroll. Provision of resources and care used to be the domain of the family, church, and charity. Now, increasingly, it has become the role of the government. Many, if not most people in the West are either entirely or partly dependent on the state. In his video, Democracide, Why Democracy Fails, modern philosopher Stefan Molyneux highlights that people will always act in self-interest and that it's rational for them to do so.
So we all understand that people have self-interest when they vote. So if you're on unemployment insurance, then are you likely to vote for a candidate who wants to end unemployment insurance? Well, quite likely not. If you are a government worker, are you going to vote for somebody who wants to privatize whatever you're working in? Well, probably not. Are you going to, if you're a government worker, are you going to want to vote for any limitations on collective bargaining processes within the union? Well, probably not, right? So there's all of these conflicts of interest. And so where people get most involved, they're the least objective, because they're getting the most involved in that which either affects them positively or negatively directly.
A single mother has little incentive to vote for a candidate that promises to end the single parent pension, just as a public school teacher who is also a member of a teachers' union is almost certain to vote against any candidate promising to privatise all education. The more dependent you are on the state, the less objective you are about it, and the less able you are to make an objective decision on who should represent you. People demanding extortion in the name of fairness and equality is not a new phenomenon. In a democracy, it becomes the norm. The issue is highlighted by the Pareto principle, which is defined as follows. The Pareto principle is a principle named after economist Vilfredo Pareto that specifies an unequal relationship between inputs and outputs. The principle states that 20% of invested input is responsible for 80% of the results obtained. Put another way, 80% of consequences stem from 20% of the causes. This is also referred to as the Pareto rule or the 80-20 rule. This principle means a minority within any group will always produce the vast majority of resources. If the majority decide to vote for the confiscation of said production, there is little the productive minority can do about it in a universally democratic system. Under Marxist systems, the productive individuals aren't even allowed to produce more than their compatriots, as this would create inequality and they'd be sent off to the gulag. For practical purposes, there is little difference between making it illegal to produce more and confiscating the fruits of an individual's labour and skill. At least when it's illegal, you won't waste your time to begin with, but if everything is stolen anyway, why would you bother? It's a perfectly rational response to not work when there is no incentive to do so. It's also a perfectly rational response to throw your money in an offshore tax haven so that the state can't get its grubby hands anywhere near it. The question remains, how do we resolve this problem? In his book, Democracy, the God That Failed, economist and philosopher Hans Hermann Hoppe argues that a monarchy is preferable to democracy because a monarch takes ownership of a nation. This ownership gives the ruler an incentive to focus on long-term goals and do what is genuinely best for his country. This is opposed to the caretaker role that a democratic government plays, where it has little or no incentive to focus on anything but its own short-term self-interest. Democratic governments and politicians have strong incentives to benefit themselves as much as possible while in power. Once they lose office, any damage they may have caused is someone else's problem anyway. While it may be tempting to revert to a traditional monarchy, it is important to remember that not all monarchs are rational or good. Without a mechanism to remove them from power, new problems arise. Tyranny of the majority is bad, but so is the tyranny of a monarchy. In fact, a bad king can result in decades of war and destruction. We need a solution that forces governments to take a long-term view, but also doesn't remove people's right to have a say in how their government is run. I want to propose a two-step solution that not only does this, but ultimately removes the right of the state to extort money off its citizens entirely. First, we need to condition the vote on receiving zero income from the state. If you are earning an income funded by taxpayers, you should not have a say in how taxes are spent. That means welfare recipients, public servants, and most of all, politicians will have no voting rights at all. This would also include individuals who work for companies that contract to the state. We could make an exception for taxpayer-funded individuals who also put their lives on the line for the protection of their fellow citizens. Patrolling police officers, firemen, and most of all, frontline military personnel would all keep their voting rights. After all, if you are willing to put your life on the line for your nation, you deserve a say in how to run that nation, whether taxpayers pay you or not. The second step would be to make taxation voluntary, but a requirement if you wish to vote. I would amalgamate the tax office with the Electoral Commission and give people the right to enrol if and when they choose to. This step is less urgent than the first one, and even taking step one would see a big improvement in how our nation is run and how our taxes are spent. However, it is important to remember that taxation is theft, and theft is always immoral, whether it's done by the state or by an individual. An argument against this is that nobody would pay. This is a silly argument considering how much tax we pay right now and how little people complain about it. Yes, the state would be getting a lot less money, but that's the entire point. If the state needed more money, it would have to argue its case to the people. It would be entirely at the service of registered taxpayers, aka voters. The moral and material benefits of free market capitalism are undeniable. It is a truly moral system based on voluntary exchange and mutual benefit. It's seen us build the safest, wealthiest, and best societies in the history of the known universe. Why can't we set up a political system that uses the principles of the market? Offer the right to vote in return, and remove that right from anyone who receives an income via the state, either directly or indirectly. Protect the rights of all individuals with a US-style constitution, but only those who pay into government coffers should have any say in how it's spent. If taxes are too high, individuals can simply opt out. They lose their say on how revenue is spent, but at least they aren't being robbed at gunpoint. Even if taxpayers can't opt out, they should be the only ones who decide how taxes are spent. It would still be one man, one vote,
All woman.
and everyone would keep the right to vote so long as they choose to. Why should someone who earns a living off stolen taxes have a say in how those stolen taxes are spent? As for the second step, the result of voluntary taxation would be much smaller government that must respect the will of those who choose to pay. It would mean the state would genuinely need to reflect the will of those people, because if it didn't, it would find itself voted out very quickly, or worse, without any money. You could even keep a small sales tax on non-essential goods to ensure the basic functions of government continue to run. Anything else would need to be a genuine value proposition. John Locke believed governments that fail to protect life, liberty, and property of their citizens have no legitimacy. This is the real social contract. What we have today is not a contract between public servants and individuals, but of masters dominating their slaves. Across the Western world, not only are governments failing to protect our natural rights, they are actively working against them. Taxpayers in modern democracy are essentially just cattle, animals to be harvested purely for stealing votes. John Locke believed that not only are we well within our rights to rebel against any government that does this, but it is our moral duty to do so. Ultimately, the current system is unsustainable. It will collapse catastrophically unless we change our course soon. Either we can take our medicine now, or we can die of cancer later. I know what I'd rather. How about you?
Sir, we've been getting reports of people paying wages in something called Birdcoin.
Don't worry about it. We have control of the currency. There's nothing they can do to stop us.
Sir, there's something else. I don't know how to tell you.
Spit it out, you fool.
It's untraceable, unhackable, and anonymous if the penguins want it to be. We can't see who paid who unless they let us know. That means we can't steal it.
We must end it.
Hey everyone, I really hope you enjoyed the video. My voice is a little bit croaky, so you might have heard that, you might not have. If you enjoyed it, just don't forget to leave a little bit of a like, maybe a comment, let me know what you think of it. If you've never seen my stuff before, go check it out. There's plenty of material there. If you like that, click the subscribe button and the bell so you get notifications, and hopefully I'll see you around.